Ended up going down the corridor. So yeah, he was writing the law and all, and was very angry. My favourite page is Frank we felt the impression
I went there because it was bars like that. Yes. Stuff that made no sense. It made no sense.
I was presented and
I think he was. Ray Martin at least was trying to keep the program. I was just played a few times.
it was meant to be a shtick. It was meant to be a routine.
Yeah.
And Ray was meant to be a someone said something.
Somebody had
Ray would go there with something.
Yeah, which they'd rehearsed and written down.
And I would go and think about it and go, and he'd say something completely tangential.
Can you get any more chairs?
It was all a bit sad, I thought.
And these guys,
Charlie Duke. Yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody to 2016. My name is Peter Aylward, I'm the President of the Space Association of Australia and one of the five of the Vice Presidents. Welcome to our first meeting here, and it's nice to see so many new faces and old faces.
Thank you.
So tonight we've got a pretty packed agenda as per normal.
He doesn't mean old faces, he means familiar faces.
Oh yeah, that's familiar and old faces.
All familiar old faces. Sort of beat you old faces.
So what we're going to do is just start off with a bit of a look ahead of what's happening this year with the group, with the association, what activities we've got in the pipeline, and as per usual, the committee's been flat out trying to put together some good things, so things like that. Then we have
Sorry, on the launch pad, you meant? What activities we've got on the launch pad?
No, still in the assembly building.
we have a member turning up, hopefully, to give us a report, first-hand report for a trip he did last year to the US. To see, what did he see? What did he see? I'm not sure.
Where is he? I didn't get a chance to ask him.
Where is he?
No, he usually walks in the meetings pretty late. And he's trying to
he's trying to find a parking spot. Did you come back from that?
He likes the
he's back.
And then we've got a roundup of space news. So from around the world, our correspondents have been tracking the news, giving you all the latest videos and information. And we also have a special guest from our resident Russian space expert, Igor, on the
What would he know about Russia?
Russian man, lunar. Nothing like that.
Yeah, Stewart standing in the back.
The accent's fake. He's the resident crazy Russian amongst us.
Hey, Stuart.
He's actually Ukrainian.
Fantastic.
He's shooting Ukraine. No, that's insulting.
And then we're going to have a little bit of a break. So then we've got a roundup of news of the various activities of SpaceX and Blue Origin. There's been a lot going on, and some planetary news. And then we're going to look back, can you believe it's 30 years ago that Challenger blew up. So we're going to look at that. And then we'll kind of wrap our evening up. So, to get started, presentation. So, just to recap the meetings schedule and the reading formula is the fourth Monday of the month. apart from a couple of exceptions, which is April, which month falls on Anzac Day. So it's going to be pretty busy at the RSL, so we're going to move that to the next day, so that'll be Tuesday the 26th. And then, of course, December, the 4th Monday, there's lots of Christmas stuff going on, so we'll probably put together something like we did last year, have a early to mid-December sort of casual meeting. So keep your eye on email and Facebook and things like that. Michael in particular has been really busy working on topics for our meetings, and you might see your name out there in panic, but you've been nominated to speak through the year. No dates have been set particularly, but these are some of the things that we do have, and offers Adina, who's a member based out in Sydney. She's doing a talk and she's very keen to come down and do that talk with us, the psychology of spaceflight, so it's been fascinating. James Waddy, the inventor of the skin suit. He's a local Melbourne person. He's invented this spacesuit, which has actually been tested on the ISS, so he's keen to come along. We're going to have a member of our group presenting information about rocket engines. And I'll let you read the rest of it, but there's quite a lot going on. So, an update on Mars One from a candidate that's a member of it as well. And also, during the year, of course, Space Fest in the US is going to take place, and I think a few members are going to be going. We haven't quite made enough money out of the Space Association for me to go on the Space Association expense allowance, but yeah, trip to my salary there, yeah, that'll help.
Who's going to Space Fest?
Stuart?
Not sure.
Jim? Oh, you're not sure?
Not sure.
I'm not sure.
Lunar Howard?
I'm going.
You going?
Lunar Peter.
Hey, awesome.
Lynn and Peter Howard.
Oh yeah, there you go, fantastic.
So quite a few members.
It may be the last one.
Well, it's right, the organisers are getting on, the last one to tell the kids.
And the guests are getting on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll get the guest with me. Yeah. Please turn your phones off or you'll be thrown out of the building. Jim has, well, I haven't been, this is our tradition. Yeah.
That just
We
started.
just started doing this.
Which just started working.
Traditions on the run. Oh, Sean DeMello, who we spoke from New Zealand with last year. From Rocket Labs USA, we're going to get on him and give an update because we believe that they were supposed to have either a rocket static firing or a launch.
Rocket Lab New Zealand.
Well, it's Rocket Labs USA.
It's basically.
Is it coming ground or is your
Well, last one just Skyped in, so.
Skyped in.
Sorry, I'm looking for an Edward. Ordered a pie.
Oh, and Nick Rice is a guy from Western Australia who's started the Australian Space Party. So this year's an election year. So I'm looking for donations and bribes to help my running for.
Who's paying candidate?
Who's a candidate, by the way?
Is he for space or against space?
He's for space. He's really well, as he said, look, yeah, we've got a guy with Australian shoes in the Senate, so anything's possible. But imagine we had someone that's an advocate for space. That'd be good. As people may or may not be aware, we have the association. Your membership fees goes to help run the radio show. We run every week on every Wednesday. Andrew Rennie is not around. He's the main driver behind it, producer, presenter. So he's got a very busy program ahead. I won't read through them all, but he and others have been recording stuff all year and putting stuff to where, trying to correspond with local, current events and historical events and the anniversaries thereof. So have a look at that. This information is on our website, so if you want to take a look at that, as are the dates, etc. Please go ahead to the website. For those that missed it, like me, Ed Buckby, who people don't know, Ed Buckby was a PR guy for NASA. He worked back in the NASA with the Mercury astronauts, and he was out in Australia very recently. So he was basically their publicity and administrative guy that looked after the Mercury astronauts, Gemini, Apollo, and also was worked heavily with Werner von Braun, and actually established and organised the US Space Camp. So fascinating guy. So there's the website. Have a look there and get information about that. Stewart, did you need something on the load?
I just go to Michael to put on there. Yeah.
Okay. Ready, Stewart?
Probably.
So, without any further ado, we'll hand over to Stewart Gangell, who has just come back from the US. Well, late last year. He couldn't be at the trivia night because he was away, I think. And back, I just didn't want to show up. I'm not going to move those more. Patricia, do you want to sit on the couch over here?
After we bring in some more chairs.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's a good idea. There's about 7 or 8 files, so you can just open up each one and go through each one. They don't have to be in any order.
Is it a PowerPoint or do you want the pointer? There's a laser on it.
It's just photos, that's all.
Do you want the laser?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Sit on the couch over.
Red buttons. Very good. Okay. Are you ready? Okay. Went over there, evening all. I went up to the States there on last week of November till the, I think it was about the 5th, 6th of December, in an attempt to see the Cygnus resupply mission to the space station. The files that you're going to see, or the photos that you're going to see, are not in any order in particular, but I've just grouped them in such, going through them. And this is the actual first day of the launch, or first attempt I should say. On the Thursday evening, it was supposed to launch at 5:55 from memory, something like that. It was very cloudy, overcast, a bit difficult to get a good photo of the rocket on the pad. Just keep going through. You can see it's starting to get a bit dark and the lights are coming on. Obviously it didn't go, so this is the next day.
Weather looks a bit better.
And the weather was it was promising. I took that photo of the sky on the bus trip out there. They actually closed, for those that don't know, the Saturn V building and where the viewing site is over at KSC. They actually close it to people who have only got tickets to see the launch. So they close the Saturn V building down, they evacuate the building, and then only people who have bought tickets to see the launch actually go in. Hence, this is on the Friday, and not too many people turning up the next day. So they certainly make an effort and hope everything goes well the first time round. So this is a few photos. This is the viewing. This is from the Saturn V. Yeah, and
That's inside.
there's a button.
That's
Sorry.
inside,
Oh,
not visitors.
oh, it works. Okay. Yeah, okay. I can do that. You do.
That's not, Stuart, that's not the visitor centre, that's where the Saturn.
Saturn V building, yeah.
The Saturn V.
The Saturn inside the centre itself, yeah.
Yes. Well, you've got your Kennedy Space Centre, or Visitor Centre, which is just a complex outside NASA's area. So
Yeah.
the Saturn V building is on
No.
NASA's
I know
property. I think we've gone the wrong way there.
Gone the wrong way.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, on the bus trip out, just took a look at the sky and you can see a little bit more promising than that compared to the previous day. As I said, not too many people are turning up there.
You can see the structure, 39A structure
Yeah, this
there.
one here,
That's where the
39A.
shuttle Saturn V used to launch.
And I think we're looking for is over here somewhere. A little bit better. Yeah. So you can see there, probably might be venting with oxygen as well. You can just see there. This is, I think we started going out there around about 3:30 in the afternoon again, and it was delayed an extra 30 minutes. So it was going to be launching, or the attempt was going to be launching at 6:25. Just a couple of close-ups. Apologies for the clarity, but not much can be done about that at this stage. Starting to get a little bit cloudy again and darker, threatening. a couple of shots of 39A there. And also, you can see this little building here. You was maybe aware of the new SpaceX building.
Oh.
So right at the bottom of the ramp going up to 39A, yeah. So again, it's getting darker. Still promising and everything, and while we're there, they do have a PA system going on at all times, and you're hearing the live commentary going on to say, yeah, it's all good so far, until it gets to T-minus 4 minutes as such. But I'll hold everything and I'll check everything again, 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. And I think that's 39B we're looking at there, looks like. This one just here. Try to do a couple of panoramic shots, but not too bad. But again, I think you can see 39A again. And obviously across to the front. It is over there, isn't it? I think. You can see it. Looks. And yeah, just scanning a little bit there. And count's getting closer. Crowd's getting a little bit anxious. It's getting darker, more difficult to see. And it was over, so that was the last shot I took. Just leaving the facility.
So that's a scrub.
Sorry? It was scrub. Yeah, it was scrubbed for, that was Friday night. Also scrubbed Saturday when I left it. I was leaving Orlando. It actually launched, it was 8 o'clock Monday morning when I arrived back in Melbourne. So it was a 4-day delay. So that's all on those, isn't it? Just walking out through the rock garden. You can see from the time we left, as soon as we, the launch or the countdown was scrubbed, we just straight onto the bus and we're back there within about 20 minutes or so. And I was just walking through the rocket garden in KC. It helps a little bit, but I'm that's it. Okay. Next one. On my very first day of arriving into Orlando and going down to Kennedy Space Center, a few of us lining up over here, waiting for our day with the astronaut, John McBride. And it was basically about a 6-hour bus trip and accompaniment of John McBride through the KSC Centre and NASA as well. So we had him for that period of time, and also lunch with him as well. So just waiting. While we were waiting, we actually did the rocket garden tour. There's always volunteers going through the rocket garden, and I think they do tours, probably about 6 tours a day, and each one goes for about 15-20 minutes. And I'll just take them around and talk about the different, each volunteer will have their own views and opinions as such, and memories on the rocket garden, and each one is certainly different from the
What did they plant to get a rocket garden?
Gee, I think they had some special seeds.
Lots of fertilizer.
Special lettuces.
Fuel oxidizer
Maybe some
and
Estes
fertilizer.
rockets or something like that. Yeah?
Political fertiliser.
Yeah, political fertilizer, that's right.
Yeah, dollars.
Okay, so as soon as we caught up with John, he took us straight into the, for those who might know, the Atlas building. This was all a photo opportunity and professional photographers taken as well. So we shook hands, met him. By the time we did all that, we had a couple other NASA representatives as well. Oops. One of the gentlemen here, his name is John Davies. He was basically a spokesman for the tour as such, so we could talk to John from time to time when time permitted or allowed, if you like. Most of the time he'd be doing the talking for us. While we're in the Atlantis building, not only did we see Atlantis and a bit of a talk with that, we also do the way we started off our tour was with the Shuttle Experience Simulator ride. Not too sure how many people in here have done the shuttle experience. Tim, you
I
have?
know you haven't done it because you didn't do it the first time we were there. Chickened out.
Anything else? I wasn't feeling well.
Adapting to 1G.
It's all right, I can do it now with my eyes closed. Yeah, so we just go around the bus and we're boarding there. So I think on the tour there was about, it's a 45-seater bus and there was about 35, 37 people on the tour. For this particular tour, they're actually, because, and we'll come into some other slides later, with apparently either new management or a new perspective due to a terror alert in at KSC, the then and now tour that some of us have done before is no longer available. So you can't go on to Cape Canaveral and see the sites that we used to see over there. So they're offering every 3 months, I think it is, at least twice in those 3 months, a particular tour that we call a Day of the Astronaut, which is the tour that we did on this. I think the charge is about $160 US, $150 US. So we go on our tour, I'm not sure where we were going or what we're going to see, so you just try and take the photos where you can when the opportunity presents itself. And if you're on the wrong side of the bus, well, too bad. It's a bit hard to get some of those special photos. Obviously we go out past the VAB and past the crawler. And obviously we go out near pad 39A as well. We'll come back to a couple more photos of these later as well. But this is 39A, and this part here is the launch and vertical tower, if you like, or the Falcon 9 Heavy that's being installed. And we found out also, I think I've got a photo of it also later. You can see rain on the windows and all that, so it's a little bit of spot rain from time to time. So we're coming around that building that we saw in the previous photo. Driving up alongside it, you can see the ramp continuing up there to pad 39A. And again, you can just see a little bit more of a better photo of the tower that's been put in place. And you can also see the railway tracks that are going up there as well. So we're certainly doing a bit of work out there. This is the building where all the Falcon 9 Heavy is supposed to be taken off from, or being prepared and assembled as it. So we're just driving around back at 39A. Try and take some more photos when you can. The bus doesn't stop at all, so you can only try and take a photo when you can, when you think there's a good chance. So you're keeping both eyes open so you don't get poles and trees blocking off your vision when you're taking photos as well. We obviously know why the fences are curved, don't we? Keep the alligators out.
Crocodiles or
Alligators.
No, they crawl up.
It's true. Nearly all the bus tours you go on there, when they're going past the fence, they're always telling you that cameras put in place, night sensors and all the rest of it. That's why they put the curved extension on top of the on the fence. Anyway, a bit more, moving along.
Was that found out by experience or?
Yeah, they actually found the alligators inside the pen, yeah. Inside the work area. They couldn't find out why.
Capture with Neil.
So the tour continued onto the Cape a little bit. Came back to the Saturn V building. I don't want to take up too much time with photos as such.
So, do you want me to show
But
that?
just go to the next one, yeah. I'm just flicking through them quickly. Again, for some of us who have been over there before, will know the Astronaut Hall of Fame, which is another building that was built probably about 5-6 miles out from Kennedy Space Center. And you can see they've got signage up here now saying that the Astronaut Hall of Fame is moving and it's going to become the Heroes and Legends Yeah, the building also that some of us have been to before this one here, the early space exploration, is all closed now. Can't get in there, so everything that's in there is locked away. Couldn't see anything, which was rather disappointing. And the Astronaut Hall of Fame building that's up the road too is also closed. So some of these exhibits that you want to see, you can't see. Where it would have been good if they kept one open, so at least you could appreciate some of the things that are still available. So it's a little bit disappointing in that, so it's all blocked off, and they've blocked off part of the rocket garden as well. This is giving you an idea of the concept, what they're expecting. Inside, again, if you can remember going into the Astronaut Hall of Fame, all the astronaut photos, missions, badges, all that sitting in the background. Not too sure what that one is like. It could be similar to the Atlantis building. You actually spiral down and such, spiral up, whatever. But there's no insight into what's happening. It's only just these billboards to the photo of. No one in the visitor centre or anything like that could give an explanation as to what's happening. Or related to one or the other. So, again, one of the other exhibits is closed off. This was another one for the families where the kids used to go in and see robots and all that sort of setup. They've closed that off as well, so I've no idea what's going in there. Only just the signage, as you can see there. NASA's working hard, boots on Mars. Again, that's a part of the exhibit also that's closed. It's a bit disappointing, the astronaut encounter. It used to be a great one. Had a bit of a show in there, a bit of a theatrical entertainment for, they'd have a couple of KC employees putting a theme as such, asking question and answers with the kids and the families in the audience. But that's not in there as well either now. The astronaut encounter now takes place in the in one of the IMAX cinemas across the side.
Species, so you've got to be very careful.
Sorry?
They're an endangered species, so you've got to be very careful.
But they are recruiting. That might be all of that. Next one. Okay, one of the exhibits that's still happening, and they're promoting, I guess with the successful launch of the EFT-1 last year, or sorry, the year before last, there's always a big buzz about going to Mars and the Ryan program and such. So they've changed the theme inside this next building, which is the exploration and such. And they had a live presentation going on. So just a couple of slides. It was a gentleman from ULA. There was a few slides there on, as you can see, they put down some seats to accommodate for it. So this might be something that's going to be happening quite regular until such time, especially while ULA and SpaceX are launching, until we get to the stage where...
is that the normal press room?
No, it's inside the exploration room actually.
Okay.
Yeah, they've just modified it as such to put the stage in and everything like that. So again, they've changed things a little bit compared to other years. But it certainly worked well, and they do this, I think they do this twice a day, this particular talk. So again, it was quite a good presentation. You can sit there, ask questions, and it was really good. I'll just leave him there for a second or two while you can get some idea of what he'll be talking about as such.
So ULA has launched every mission to Mars, huh?
Sorry?
One of the ones that ULA has launched every mission to Mars is every GPS satellite.
Well, not the Russian one.
Well, using their rockets anyway.
ULA.
Yeah, but that's...
No, but they-
see the Boeing...
Yeah.
So they're taking a bit of license.
Yeah, but it used to be called the USS RLA.
These talks actually go for about 30-40 minutes. They're quite good. See, obviously an old photo of Launch Complex 41, You'll see some photos coming up soon of the changes they've done out there. And I think through the success of the Cygnus one, they've got a second Cygnus lined up with ULA as well.
Faster than a pizza.
Sorry, what was that?
Faster than a pizza delivery. We're going to the wrong pizza shops.
That's correct, yeah. And that was it. A couple of websites they throw up, and yeah, they're certainly trying to promote it a lot more. And I feel this
They've
may
got
be
competition
appreciated.
now.
Sorry?
They've got competition now, though. Interesting though, there's no Vulcan on this.
Sorry?
No Vulcan. Their supposed follow-up rocket.
When
That
they've got
might come
anything
later,
but
who
the
knows?
name for it, I reckon they'll start showing it.
Hey?
When they've got anything but the name.
That's really what I'm saying.
Still not funded by the board.
I know, and that's why it's not on these slides.
Well, certainly for the next couple of years anyway, until they're taking the manned missions getting up to the space station, going from the pad 39A or from the Launch Complex 41. Going from both, from what I understand. Yeah, they'll certainly change, but they're going to certainly ramp up from a PR perspective a lot more and more, even though some of these activities are closed. But a couple of nice photos of the Orion heat shield. You can see on there for the dimensions. The heat shield, if you could run the line around for the Mercury, Gemini and Apollo heat shields. So you can certainly see it's substantially bigger.
When 40 years, took 40 years to add another
So where's the shuttle?
300 mil onto the shelf.
But
They did just put shuttle.
300
Yeah, they haven't put the shuttle there.
300 miles in the radius.
Well, they couldn't find any tiles.
We'll get back to the shuttle in a minute anyway. Just a few exhibits on the Mars as well. They're certainly promoting those a little bit more as well. Being all in the one room for the exploration, so I'm sure there's something going to work on that anyway. I was impressed with the entrance to the building anyway too. I took that as I left. But yeah,
That's one of the new suits, is it?
So it's not a display, it's a recruitment centre.
No, it's Fantasyland.
There's a transit lounge, but no arrival lounge.
it's a one-way ticket.
It's no departure lounge either.
It gives new meaning to the term transportation.
Which one do you want? Explore? Yeah. Is it in that sequence on? Okay.
We've only got another 5 minutes.
Yeah, explore. Go on. Keep going. Quickly. Move a bit faster. Okay, that was just one of the oldest, one of the 3 tours I had is the Explore tour. So you go from the same bus arrival and departure area. Sorry, you come back through the where the old departure was, but when you actually all the departures now happen from the at the end of the rocket guard where Sat 1B is. You go for a drive around through the NASA complex, see all the new buildings going up, a few new buildings anyway, still got the old ones. From what we understand, some of these old buildings are going to be torn down and replaced. We went out to the concourse, that's as far as we can get to where the viewing section is. Obviously we couldn't keep continuing to go into Cape Canaveral site. Just a photo 37. There's only just a bit of memorabilia looking across to where Alan Shepard took off from. You can't get over there, so you have to imagine you can see it. This is my first shot of the Launch Complex 41, where the Cygnus was going to be launching from. You can see the new tower that's been erected under construction. Try to zoom in, couldn't see too much, but there's probably a gold core inside there. See a little bit better. Also, the tour takes you past the umbilical tower for the SLS system, for those who know what that is. We didn't know where the bus was going to take us, and all of a sudden it does a right-hand turn after we go past the VAB building, and next thing you know we're going right past this. And again, I'm trying to take photos in between people, and you don't have much time to take a photo. It's a test vessel, I think it is. They fill it with water and do testing with it. There's the umbilical tower. And it didn't slow down, it just drove straight past it. So you're just trying to hold the camera while it's going to tilt the lens and just quick as much as you can. Obviously we got around it, you can see the crawler tracks in the foreground here. So the bay's open, the bay doors open on the VAD building, and then we went back out past the SpaceX building when it hadn't been raining. So we got a couple of clear shots here. Frame was working, doing some work on the lift. And you can see the signals inside there as well. Again, we couldn't get much closer. So you're trying to use your zoom as much as possible to get the to do the photos. This is one of the. I think this was. I'm not sure if I have another photo on it. No.
Kinesiolite.
Sorry?
It's called kinesiolite, I think.
Was it? I couldn't remember if it was public run or whether it was run by NASA. But it takes my whole day to set up the camera and get it ready for the launch anyway.
Someone's got an SLR strapped on the bottom there.
Sorry?
Someone's got an SLR strapped on the bottom there with a long lens on it.
Just a couple more shots there. Obviously see it being constructed, so it's happening. Some of us might have seen that sign, code A and B. Or is it a familiar sight there? Getting a little bit clearer looking at the building of the tower being built.
Oh, when are they going to be about 5?
6. It's going to be
For those who've been over there too, you would know that trying to take a photo is very difficult given the humidity as such. And the haze that happens over there. Someone?
I was trying to find the future of the Saturn program and they've had the fun extensions.
Follow the passage program.
No.
Go quickly through these ones.
So they settled back for Saturn 5.
There's a C8
B8 was made.
And whenever the doors are open in the VAB building, you try and take a photo because you don't know what's inside. Might surprise you. We're going into the launch control complex. Just as you enter the foyer, there's always a couple of models and things like that happening. You have security escorting you around the place at all times. This is the door where all the staff go through into the launch control room number 4. Whereas the last time I went in, we went through private doors up at the top, and you couldn't go through this door. But now they've made a few changes in there, so everyone goes in through these doors now. So the launch control centre, looking out the windows, seeing everything that everybody else would see. You can see the obviously 39A, and you can see the SpaceX building as well. We can go through there.
Look at those louvers.
39B, sorry?
Look at the vertical louvers up there.
It appeared, sorry, yeah. Just the old glass from what we were told. Just handed it around. There was 3 grains of glass, and that glass was supposed to withstand the force of a small nuclear bomb, as they tell you. Again, just zooming in, or trying to get a good photo looking out through the launch control centre. You can see they've put up all these barriers or walls around, whereas when you're seeing photos before, all the desks were exposed. The idea of what they're setting up now is that ULA and SpaceX or anyone else that wants to actually launch or can actually have their own room set up in there. And that's the way they're going to be doing it in the future. The actual wiring room number 3 that was next door to this was actually had a lot of technicians and everything with flat screens redesigning or designing the new layout for the new rooms to come. Again, just trying to take a photo from the centre to look at the other side. While you're in the room, they put on a commentary of a launch on the TV and everything, and actually do the shuttle experience. They also have surround sound happening to give you, so you can feel the vibrations and everything that you would experience in that room during an actual launch. And that's coming up to the end. Just a photo of the tower, one to the left. There we're leaving. That should be it. Yep. Just two more. Yeah. Last couple of quick.
This was the, this is that tour that you took.
This was the launch control tour. There's only 3 tours you can do in here. Yeah. This is the memorial inside the Atlas building. So that's a piece of Challenger. Atlantis. Yeah.
You said that?
Sorry? Oh, sorry. Typo.
Sorry, was that Challenger or Atlantis?
Challenger?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Challenger, Columbia.
So I've set up a mural, not so much a mural, but a display as such. I'll just quickly go through them. For each of the astronauts that have perished in these missions, we've got a few artifacts and obviously their photo in there, and a bit of a commentary in there.
I had one of those. Exactly the same plane.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. So I just took a photo of each one. It's quite moving when you get in there, it's very quiet. A lot of respect paid by people when they go in there, even the kids as such, they want to know. Obviously, Columbia. Sorry for the photos being around the other way. Because there's that many people in there, you're taking the photos and you're trying to get it without other people being in the way. But yeah, worth going in there anyway. So, and the last one, the Walk of Fame, somebody told me to go out and see.
Is it the first time you've been there?
First time, yeah. I went out there twice actually. Last 2 days. For those that know, it's a little museum out of Titusville. They have a lot of items, original items that are used all through the space program, from the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Lido. Everything's either donated or it's from actual astronauts who've had their own things given to them as such that they've kindly donated on as well. Sorry?
Run by volunteers.
And run by volunteers, yeah. They do tours through there. And again, you can probably spend, I reckon, probably half a day solid. And the place is not much bigger than probably this room, these 2 rooms combined, correct?
I thought they'd moved since we were
Pine Street, I think it is. Pine Street. Obviously a few models and all those sorts of things. All the bolts, the explosive bolts that they put for holding the SRBs in. I weighed about 80 pounds something. I think on these panels here they get the kids to do a reenactment and that sort of thing, so they can put the headsets on and act out a real mission. Those will. If you get the phone, I think that's a new edition. And these are only just a handful of the photos. As you're going around, you're trying to take photos of anything and everything that looks appealing and such, but again, you go into these special rooms dedicated to the fire team or astronauts or the owner who started the museum, and you spend a while there. These are the actual models that have been used for to present to government and politicians and such. If you ever see any old artefact photos and such, they are the actual models that were used. Again, spend quite a bit of time in there. This particular boot, or the X-ray, is a copy of an X-ray of Neil Armstrong's boot, his cover boots that actually were worn by him when he went to the moon, or took his first step. So it's only a copy, but before they actually go into the capsule, they've got an X-ray to make sure that there's nothing else extra around. And just a sample of one of his training boot. And you can see this, astronaut assignments. Not too sure if you can see the names there. You've got, there we go. Chevy Grissom, Blaine, such. And you've got White, McDivitt, Young. How they would have been scheduling things, I guess. Spacecraft thruster 8 control system on Gemini 8. The 40 one, imagine, the one like that, see? That's what it's supposed to do. Next one is Gemini 4. Exploded after takeoff or something. That's just a bit of shrapnel as such. Made out of titanium, showing how what the explosion did with the titanium as well too. A couple of models that some of the astronauts have donated and signed. More memorability, you can spend a lot of time looking at the photos and reading and everything. And that's it. And any questions? That's all. No? Thanks, Joe. That's right.
I have a question. I've been there a few times, and you've watched this place transition from being a real piece of history to a theme park. What's your view on that?
In progress. Look, I can see that they have to do the changes to make it relevant to everything, just like they're doing things out at on NASA's site itself, where they're modifying the VAB building and all the other complexes, because everything was old 50s, 60s technology. So while they're remodelling and that, getting everything ready for the SLS system and future missions and such, you've got to do the same thing with the visitor centre as well. If you saw some of the photos and what that looked like in the early 60s as well, it's very dated and everything, and it's certainly come a long way, but they've got to have to do some changes.
You're going deeply man a bit though, isn't it?
Well, you've only got the one right as such.
Yeah, to some extent.
They've only got that little bit of land to work with.
A lot of the history's just gone.
Well, it hasn't gone. At the moment, I couldn't get access to it, because they closed down some of the areas while they were renovating and that. And as I said earlier, whether it's the terror alert that stopped people going onto Cape Canaveral, or new management, the new director that's running it, is allowed for all these changes to happen and just close things up, and that's the way it is. So it's rather disappointing, but bear in mind, we've only got another couple of years before we start seeing a lot more rockets being launched and start seeing astronauts going up. So the buzz and the theme and everything is really going to hype up a lot more. And especially when, like I said, the next 18 months, 2 years, there's going to be a lot more people going through it. So they've got to gear up, ready for that. So we're just in that transition at the moment, I feel.
But they're probably down a lot of the good old stuff, that's the problem.
They probably would, but who's going to say what you see in it? So I wrote half a page email complaining about the sites that I couldn't see, but I don't have a reply back either.
I think what you're referring to is sort of a general trend over the last 20 or 30 years, that a lot of us are interested in the old-fashioned nerdy stuff where you just pile as much stuff into a room as possible.
Yeah.
Whereas most museums worldwide these days are going for far less stuff than the presentation of information. So that's probably a reference to the Disneyland approach.
I understand that too, yeah.
If you go to, say, the qualitative difference the museum here
Yeah.
and what it was like when it was still in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
It was still the old-fashioned type. There were just cases and cases and cases of stuff.
But again,
That was great, you could see it.
Right, but I mean, that's how it's
They just
transitioned.
pick out a few things.
Yeah, that's how it's transitioned.
well, yes, I know, but the space, the visitor centre itself has only got a certain amount of land to work with. And they'll work with that, and I
No,
understand
I
that.
understand the rationale. I'm just saying.
But if you really want to get
It's part
into
of
the
the
real
global
reason,
trend
oh yeah,
that it's in a way simplifying and sort of focusing in on a smaller number of facts, and of course
and
trying to
hopefully
keep
down
up
the
to
track
date.
they can actually
What
change
you're
some other
saying
things. So the things that aren't put away, they'll bring them out.
What he's saying is only partly true. What was in the old museum is in storage. I'm looking at it more in a museum store, and you walk in there, oh hell, bloody old electronic microscope, sort of thing, you know, it's not. There's a heap of junk out there, and they're playing musical chairs all the time. It comes out of storage,
Yeah, some
goes
things
on
do
the
reshape.
show,
It depends on the type of museum.
and it's also there for research. A lot of people go in there and do their research at the store.
Yeah, but as far as publicly available places to
yes.
go into, there is quite a significant difference between the two styles.
Well, that's where that last place you went, the Space Walk of Fame,
Yeah.
that's the real old-fashioned,
Yeah.
big shed, crammed full of stuff. As I say, it's run by amateurs, and it's just funded by the people walking through the door. So
Yeah.
I'd head there first. I love it. And the best part of that is the people who work there are all volunteers, and they're ex-NASA workers and guys that were there doing the stuff in real life.
You just got to compare, say, the trends in the modern exhibition venues, and if you then get the other alternative, you go to the Tayab packing house, right? Where you'll see the schmozzle that we're more used to probably from our earlier days, and now, you know, I mean, you can distinguish the two atmospheres.
I mean, 30, 40 years from time, how many people in this room are going to be still around as such? And what are they going to be seeing? And the kids coming up are only going to be seeing all the stuff that they're starting to show now.
Meanwhile, while I was there, they were bloody pulling down Pad 39A, or whichever one. Yeah, so where's the sense of real history? Where they're just like, doing all this, I can't give you
Or maintain it. It's going to be pulled down.
Oh, okay, it's also
Just remember that P9A and B in the Apollo era were clean pads.
it's also history being
They weren't shuttle pads, with big structures.
But those pads had to be pulled in because of the hazards and all those sorts of things, you know, the contamination and all the rest of it. You know, you can't be exposed to people, they have to be destroyed. A bit like asbestos. It's not, you just can't leave it there. It's got to be put away somewhere. What are you going to do? Just get people to look at it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you,
Really
Stuart.
So now we have Igor. Igor Rozenberg. Igor Rozenberg. And he's now going to present on the Russian manned
Moon architecture.
moon space program.
The new one.
The new one.
The new old
Not the old
new
one.
one.
I'm interested.
Runners?
Before I started to talk, I would like to see promotional video by Rocket and Space Corporation Energy. I didn't have any means to translate Russian, so my apology for this, but I promise we're going to translate each shot later in the next manned spacecraft.
How old is it, this video?
This couple of months.
Okay.
This is Angara 5P man-rated launch vehicle. Docking with International Space Station. Mass of the low Earth orbit 14 tons. It can deliver 500 kilos to ISS. Crew 4 people.
Is this just the ISS mission?
Yeah, this is ISS mission. We will talk about two configurations. It can stay up to 1 year as a part of International Station. Now we're talking about Moon, manned missions to Moon. It's a beefed up version. You can see the huge third stage. Acceleration no more than 4G, so it should be quite smooth ride. You can see stack from the spacecraft itself and space tech, which docking with another space tech.
So that's already been pre-launched, obviously.
Yeah, we will talk about this. It requires full launches. Okay. This tech will provide delivery of 20 tons to low lunar orbit. First tech delivered manned spacecraft, second tech delivered lunar module, and there is a lunar orbital rendezvous.
How many men?
4, I believe. This design is not even not started.
What, 4 in the lander?
We will talk about lander in my slides. It's disposable. It has like Apollo lander. It has descending and ascending stage. And after rendezvous on lunar orbit and ejecting ascending stage, spacecraft can return to Earth. Which you can see it's executing transverse injection maneuver. And this is descent and entry. Again, they promise 3G and it's using combined parachute and rocket engine landing as well. Mass of descent module is 9 tons. Like I said, it's relatively fresh, but it's already outdated. Because stuff we're going to talk about, it probably was state of the art in 2015. It was effective probably from March 2015 when new management of Roscosmos decided to ditch spending for super heavy launch vehicle and decided to go in another way. By the way, contrary to popular belief, what you see here, what you can see on the left, it's not new secret Russian rocket. It's a landscape, it's a Moscow landscape, and on the left is a TV tower in Ostankino. This is not Vostochny landscape, this is Moscow.
Ran away there.
Andrew?
It's closer to
Okay, destination Moon, nothing changed in the last 50 years from orbital mechanic point of view. Yes, we have a huge innovation in terms of materials, we have huge innovation in terms of information technology, control system, we have some good and bad things in management, but in order to get people to the Moon and bring them safely back, there is only nothing changed in the last 50 years. So in order to reach Moon, obviously, a lunar expedition is supposed to launch some payload to parking low Earth orbit. By this proposal, they probably would use parking orbit, circular parking orbit with an altitude kilometers. After you assemble your stack or you launch one piece, you have to execute translunar injection burn, which actually will transfer whole stack from Earth to the Moon. In the middle of this flight, in order to adjust trajectory, you need some kind of middle course corrections. This could be done probably. You can spend like delta V 30 meters per second. It's probably less than Apollo planet because the navigational system in last 50 years probably improved. Now, upon arrival to the Moon, you have to spend fuel to decelerate and actually enter lunar orbit. And there are other expenses. This is where you're spending your fuel. These numbers, it's actually very similar to numbers which Apollo missions lie. Moon landing by itself required another delta V, 2,100 meters per second, and approximately the same numbers you have to spend in order to launch spacecraft up. And obviously, in order to go back, you have to repeat everything backwards, except one thing, you're saving a lot of fuel by entering Earth's atmosphere by aerobraking. So this numbers actually initial constraints of how mission is supposed to do and which legs of the mission is supposed to be executed. Now, last time I believe I talked about Changara launch vehicle. So this baby on the left already flew from Plisetsky spaceport. It's a heavy Angara 5 heavy launch vehicle, which they're planning to use the same configuration from Vostochny. At the moment they're constructing Soyuz 2 launch pad. Decision about Angara launch pad would be made, I believe, in 2017. The good news, they're going to launch a slightly different configuration with what I call Russian Centaur. It's a hydrolox cryogenical upper stage, just to improve the capability of missions for geostationary and for interplanetary missions. This version of Angara launch vehicle is a man-rated version. If everything could be fine, they pour a lot of money into this project. First unmanned flight would be in 2021 from Vostochny, and first manned flight on the same launch vehicle would be on 2023. Okay, less than 10 years, hopefully it would happen. For lunar mission, when in March, when they decide not to put money into super heavy launch vehicle of Saturn V N1 or Energia or SLS type, they decided to do something more interesting. They choose to build this. It's Angara evolutionary launch vehicle, which sharing this almost the same stages for first and second stage. They're almost identical, except for this vehicle they probably would be man-rated like on this one. What they did, they instead of Angara, by the way, is a full Carolox launch vehicle. Load capacity to low Earth orbit 25 tons. If you compare with the new Chinese launcher, they have something similar. Even the spaceport in China much closer to the south, and Chinese have to use hydrogen. So this rocket is actually state of. So this launch vehicle is a state of the art in terms of whichever they can get out of Carolox propulsion. So the difference between this launch vehicle and this launch vehicle, they added another third stage would be hydrogen oxygen propellant engine. As a result, they will increase payload to low Earth orbit from 25 to 77.5. Originally, they tried to, in March last year, they tried to aim on 35 tons, but we will see from mission profile, it was not enough to deliver a payload to the lunar mission, and they increased it to 7.5. Engine on this stage, potentially, I believe, it should be produced by the same manufacturer and designer which produced Russian analog of SSME. It's called RD-0120. It's only one Russian cryogenic engine which has been used on first stage. Okay, moving on. This is Anatoly Zak picture of watch inside of man-rated launch vehicle. This is what we discussed before. First 4 boosters and central core probably would be almost identical what they're going to use on Angara I-5 Manet. This is big hydrogenic stage and engine. They're going to develop, it should be propelled by 2 engines, which approximately would be 1/4 of original RD-0120. And payload, because each Manet mission, obviously they have launch escape system, which probably would weigh another 3 to 4 tons. And because of this, man-rated payload would be slightly less. There are no numbers, but I suspect it would be between 33 and 34 tons. They obviously wouldn't be able to achieve 37.5 because you have to bring with you this launch escape system tower until it's injected.
Why does the low Earth orbit version not have an escape tower whilst this does? That's quite a penalty in terms of weight.
37.5 cargo version. It's a nominal payload for non-man.
It's just a cargo version, so it's not man-rated.
No.
No, so it's not man.
But none of Russian spacecraft after Soyuz, they're always using launch escape system. They wouldn't launch it without it.
No.
Payload consists of spacecraft itself, which has now a new name. Originally it's called PTKL. It's a Russian name, L obviously for lunar edition. Now it has name Federation, not quite nice, but at least it has now a proper name. And below this you can see this part is an interorbital space tug. Amazingly, this is inheritance of N1 hardware, N1 launch vehicle hardware. It would be block DM, Keralox space tug. Obviously with much better engine and with brand new engine and with much better specification. We will go to this further. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Okay, spacecraft itself. Spacecraft itself developed since 2009. Main designer, Rocket and Space Corporation, Energia. It almost replicates design of whatever we call Orion. It has the same shape, similar shape of descent model. It has a service model. Unlike US model, everything is built in one country. And part of this payload for this for man-rated rocket is what I call, it's called in Russian MOBDM, which stands for inter-orbit space tug. Diameter of descent model 4.5 meters and diameter of service model 3.5 meters. The whole length around 6 meters, I believe. We wouldn't have time to go to this busy picture. By the way, it's in Spanish. It's not in Russian. Yeah, it has bits and pieces. There are more information. By the way, the slides will be available after presentation. Just ask Peter or Michael, and you can see it in more details. What I would like to point out that it has legs, detachable legs. leg gear could be used for soft landing, and this is why originally they planned to use 100% rocket landing. This is what Musk decided to do as well. In the process of design and redesign, which was like at least 4 iterations, they stopped with the combined parachute and rocket propellant system. They're using 3 parachutes like Apollo, so they don't need to have a backup system because it's safe enough, like case with Apollo 15 when one of the parachutes didn't open, they're still able to manage to land it safely. By this decision shed approximately 1 ton of the weight of spacecraft, which was actually quite a good idea. Even some people believe that they have to go for fully powered descent and landing.
But again, why did they put legs? The Sawyer's now just, retro fires and hits the ground. Why have they
reusability? The capsule. We have 2 versions of the spacecraft. Originally, Planet designers envisioned a whole series of different spacecraft. Only 2 of them survived to get funding, and those 2 are low Earth orbit version as a supply ship for International Space Station or maybe other stations, and another one is a more like deep space exploration at this stage, each for Moon. In theory, this spacecraft can return with a second space speed, second space velocity. In theory, if you have a proper habitational model, it can fly anywhere between orbits of Venus and Mars. This was part of requirements. Not by itself, but in presence of habitation model. Okay, you would have chance to look at this by yourself. Now, launch campaign, they decided not to use 1 super rocket to bring manned expedition to the Moon. They decided to use 4 rockets. First 2 rockets are, first pair, this one, 2 cargo vehicles. The second launch vehicle with a much bigger payload fairing. They need bigger payload fairing because lunar model is much wider than an orbital spacecraft. And the second rocket for the first launch payload is 1 space tag. So what I'm trying to tell you is that for first pair, they will launch separately this part, which is called MOV KVTK. It's a cryogenic hydrogen oxygen propelled space tag, which has a passive docking unit. On this rocket, they would launch lunar module with the block DM together, and eventually they would have first 2 payload have to meet, and they have to create lunar chain on the orbit after docking. So it would be first Earth orbit rendezvous. After that, after everything assembled, this tag could execute separately translunar injection and go to the Moon orbit separately. Now, after this happened, launch campaign would include another 2 launch vehicles in order to launch man-rated launch vehicle with a crew on board, plus another launch vehicle which would deliver it second space, cryogenic space tag. You can see this here. This is space tag which will dock with stack which consists of block DM and spacecraft itself. So second Earth orbit rendezvous would create this stack, and it will separately fly to the Moon. Any questions?
When it's estimated to be materialized, all this?
Okay, this was state of the art in 2015. It should be in 2016, because of limited funding, it obviously would be reviewed. they did not get funding, they did not approve budget till March. So what they plan to do before 2016, the timeline was around 2029, but I believe now everything shifted to 2035, and maybe not according to the schema.
When's the space station supposed to be in the future?
Space station agreement has been extended till 2024, but it most likely would be extended. This is another two slides. It's actually more like designer exercise than real design of lunar lander. The biggest premium for lunar lander, actually, the biggest constraint, it's not actually even a mass. It's the biggest constraint is the volume of the payload fairing, and you can see it has distinctive vertical design in order to fit into payload fairing. And as you can see, they're trying to exercise different options. Common descending stage, and this ascending stage resemble cylindrical habitation model of Chinese spacecraft. This ascending stage layout more closely resembles a Soyuz habitational model. There is another option when they try to reuse descending model of orbital spacecraft, and this is something similar to what ATM with reverse conus. Different kind of pressurized cabin for ascending models. And like I said, this is probably the most critical part. They need to create a different payload fairing to make sure that lunar module will fit 5.5 meter in diameter. Somebody asked about numbers, about lunar module. There are a lot of numbers, but in a nutshell, it's approximately 33% more, bigger by volume and size than Apollo 1. You will have a chance to get some.
Igor, payload down 100 kilograms and the payload up 25 kilograms.
Yes.
What's that mean?
Okay. Lander, when it's going down, it can bring 100. It has two stages, descending and ascending. So they're obviously consuming some materials on the surface, but they can bring only 25 up.
Kilograms?
Yes.
25 kilograms?
Yes.
So you can take one whole astronaut down but only bring his leg back?
No. On top of the crew mass.
Oh, okay.
How many kilos of food? Yeah. Obviously crew included.
What's the mass, what's the deliverable payload mass to the surface of the moon? Including the astronauts. How much mass can it put on the moon?
Okay.
11 ton.
Okay, yeah.
11 ton.
No, it's not 11. You have to check 20,000, sorry. You have to check 20,000, which is total mass on start. You have to deduct, it's less than 11, 10.5. Landing mass would be 10.5, 11 tons.
Okay.
So it's not much payload.
It's very, very small.
Containing rocket heavies.
How many people are they thinking of?
Up to 4.
4 on the lunar surface in that vehicle?
And up to 2 weeks. This is why they have to sacrifice on something. Apollo mission didn't spend more than 3 days.
No, that's right.
So, I'm not sure if they can manage to put 4 people. I suspect that 2 weeks is for 2 people, and if they stay smaller...
And how much surface equipment? Any rovers or...?
Design, this is the best what I have at the moment. They have to run a separate research and development project for lunar model, which everything is shifted to because of economical and political situation. They're supposed to start it, but it's even outside of this planning period.
Land, it doesn't even repeat Apollo. This doesn't even...
Well, in some ways it does, and in some ways it doesn't.
Doesn't.
It's a variation on Apollo.
Where's the longevity? Where's the...
Doesn't matter.
you know, I mean, if you don't have a rover, what?
Rover and another, what they call lunar polygon, could be delivered separately.
So habitats, rovers, it's fine.
Yeah, but it has to be delivered separately.
But have they got that in the planning, or is that just something?
They had it in planning, but and I even can open. What they did, because I give you a number of their space budget. They requested 2.4 trillion rubles. It's like treated like yens. It's just a number. What they get back, they get approval only for 1.4. So the budget has been cut down more than 30%. What they managed to do, they put all of this funding for research for deep space exploration under black ops budget, which even now will take approximately 6% of all budget. So they're still working on it. I cannot answer when it could be materialized. I suspect with current economical situation rather later.
Please, Igor, sorry. Just who came up with the idea of the lunar orbit?
Okay, with the idea of lunar. I believe it was original design was it was Russian scientist which called, his name was Kondratyuk, which actually happened to be not his real name, but he named by this alias. He was the first one who proposed that direct descending to the moon would be more expensive, so you need two parts. You need orbiter and you need a lunar module which will provide your way down and up.
Okay, so that lunar orbiter is going to be there for a major part of the lunar expedition subsequently going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So that itself, I think, is a rather a brilliant idea. Rather different from.
It's not different. The Apollo mission has followed the same path.
Yeah, but that was only to actually be the transit there and back. So will this Russian lunar orbiter be there for any length of time? Like, fairly permanently or not?
It's not a permanent. To have a permanent outpost, you need a space station, something like the lunar version of ISS. This rocket, which I show you, it could deliver 10-ton station modules in one launch. It could. The question is, Russians now looking for partnership with the European Space Agency, probably with Chinese, because new head of European Space Agency has his vision about lunar moon village, but keep in mind that European Space Agency doesn't have a man-rated spacecraft or any transportation system to go there, so just for the space. And
also to have a lunar space station, like a lunar version of the ISS, is incredibly difficult. Apart from the effort of getting it there, assuming you can solve that problem, which is really just a money problem anyway, you need continual manoeuvring to maintain a stable orbit in lunar orbit because of the mass cons, because the gravity fields are not uniform, so the orbit's varying all the time.
Polar orbit is more stable, and the rest,
polar orbit is more stable.
Yeah, and this is why they choose to go to polar orbit. And actually it required less delta V to enter moon. Plus there are 4 or 5 so-called frozen orbits when you're spending less. Plus they did not choose which place they can put lunar outpost. It could be one of Lagrange points, or it can be 100 or 200 kilometers low lunar orbit.
Igor, you showed the various versions of the lander with a Shenzhen capsule and a Soyuz capsule. They're not actually, you just put them there for size, right?
I did not put it. They have to be scaled to size.
They're not purely for scale. They're not going to actually put a Soyuz capsule on.
No, it's a shape.
Because the Apollo lunar module, we all know, was made of tinfoil, like thickness and stuff.
It's actually another urban legend. It was aluminium. It was covered by tinfoil. Okay, Michael, how much?
5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, this is space tug. This is cryogenic space tug powered by 2 engines, which we discussed before. Engines would be, this is Russian version of RL-10. Surprisingly, it has been created in cooperation with US. These engines not space worthy, but they would be in 2021. This is piece of legacy from N1, Russian moonshot. Actually the same, I suspect, and I truly believe that according to number, this space tug probably would be much closer assembled space tug which they're using for land launch operations, because it's more similar by size and propellant capacity. Yeah, they already discussed this, so I'm not going to repeat it. How it can be done. This is first part. This is first pair of launches. This is second pair of launches. This is how trans-lunar injection would happen for manned space stack. And yeah, this is how lunar orbit rendezvous would have occur. Docking between orbital spacecraft and lander, which happened probably on polar orbit, while each of these components would be delivered and arrive separately. Total stack mass after docking is 37-38 tons. I believe it's bigger than Apollo after service module spent a lot of fuel for lunar orbit insertion. So you can call it Apollo on steroids. It's approximately 1/3 in terms of mass. This is comparison by geometry between Russian Federation, it's the name of spacecraft, not country, Orion, Dragon version 2, main version, and Boeing Starliner STS-100. Only 2 spacecraft on the right are capable for deep space exploration, and because of this, Charles Bolden, when he was visiting Moscow last year in April, during launch of 1-year mission, he actually proposed Russians to launch this spacecraft on top of SLS, and it's not a joke. It's deadly serious because they cannot use neither of these commercial spacecraft for deep space exploration. So for NASA, it's a plan B.
No, the SpaceX one can only go to Mars.
Okay, we will talk about this.
We can argue about this one.
Okay. So what happened in last week? Most of this plan has been scrapped. It's already history. So the ugly truth is they either mimicking funding by doing black double accounting or doing black ops project. The good news is there are five lunar missions which funded, and hopefully they would happen until 2025. 3 of them for sure, because they not have to wait for spacecraft and upper stage. From these 3, 2 are landers and 1 is orbiter. It actually would be first step for Russia in the moon, despite the fact that Soviet Union was pioneering lunar exploration. Russia did not have any successful or even attempt to launch anything to the moon. Okay, and
Kick those American asses.
And yeah, the future of moon exploration probably is lying only in cooperation between major space agencies. Okay, for what we know right now, as usual in Russian space program, because they have a lot of announcements which became like a dance, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. They postponed this launch vehicle till 2025, but the good news, they still get funding super heavy launch vehicle. So watch the space, literally, because we never know what would come up next. Yeah, it was my 2 backup flight if time permits.
Thank you.
Question. There was a headline the other day that Putin scrapped Roscosmos.
Okay, under new management, original Russian space agency Roscosmos, which has been set up in 2004, will cease to exist in July 2016. Instead of which, they're running, they call it United Rocket Space Corporation Roscosmos. Roscosmos is dead, long live Roscosmos.
Just a structure change.
It's just a structure.
And look, it's even worse, it's the same people who would be reshuffled.
Shuffle the deck chairs.
Okay, we might have a 10-minute break for chatting and drinking and so on, and we'll set up for the next
So what time back? 9 here.
5 to,
5 minutes to 9.
and then by the time it's next.
Eyes down for a full hour.
What will be the next?
What are we doing next? Sorry? We're going on to the rest of the news. We'll be looking at new space, all the commercial space activities over the last few months. So the SpaceX landing, Blue Origin stuff and stuff.
Did you pick up your talk? It's scheduled for Wednesday week. Yeah, I saw it on the slide that Pete put up.
Oh, okay.
So you bumped me another week.
Yeah. So everyone's supposed to get an email.
Oh, okay. No, I'll tune in. So I've never actually listened live. I always listen to the podcast. So I'll listen to tune in.
Very interesting, isn't it?
So much happening. I had no trouble but the same goes with my car. I've got a receipt. One day earlier and one day later. No, I was saying before, you went up to Cairns for the eclipse.
Oh, yeah.
We actually stayed at Douglas. Flew up to Cairns, then took a rental car and then drove up to Port Douglas.
So the other place I've really been to is Phoenix, and I've been to Canada.
It was a bit cloudy, but we did see some of the eclipse anyway.
No, well, it's not really the right time of year.
You can't alter the astronomy, you can't alter the weather.
Rainy, cyclones, or...
Actually, those people that we did land saw the eclipse very well.
Yeah, well, I did, because I was on yesterday.
Yeah, so that's on my itinerary.
Mikey's down after she wants to I've got the people she's got to land in this area.
So I thought that was yeah, well, you're going to take it. You won't be disappointed. Ready to go?
Back in session. Now we've got our new space news, must be
And everything happens in
Angela Rugatzia and Michael Miller. We're researching and giving us the latest information. So,
Okay.
have you got?
Thank you. All right, well, welcome. This is an update from the last time we did this, which I think was November.
November the 23rd.
Yeah, so if you thought it was going to be a boring next couple of months, then think again, because it was pretty exciting. What
Oh,
Under control. Okay, so it's been pretty exciting, and we're going to capture, or we'll try to discuss, I guess, the key events, and it's really the Blue Origin SpaceX stuff. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was the NASA commercial crew program. Now, if you recall, it was broken down into two contracts. The first contract was called the CCICAP, which stood for Commercial Crew Integrated Capability. That pretty much finished off, but there were a couple of other little bits and pieces. For example, well, there were a few other milestones that had to be achieved, but they've been carried forward onto the next package. That is the CCICAP, which is Commercial Crew Transportation Capability. Now you'll see the winners, if you like, was the CST 100, which has now been named Starliner, and we've got the called Crew Dragon. SpaceX is Crew Dragon, but you'll see it around the traps called Dragon 2. Alright, our next one, moving on. This is the CST 100, and this is the Dragon with its trunk heading for the space station, and there it is. Now, at NASA you'll see they're pretty good with their advertising, and they talk about the commercial crew transportation, Boeing and SpaceX. This is a big year for these guys because this year pretty much they want most of this stuff qualified, because next year they're going to be flying men into space again, to the space station. So,
No women?
Maybe a few women as well. In fact, funny you should ask, but you'll see Suni Williams there. She's part of the astronaut cruise, the NASA astronaut cruise, because each of Boeing and SpaceX have their own. And basically they'll be launching 4 people in each time they go up, and it'll be a combination of NASA astronauts and private company astronauts. Moving on, and here they are. For those that are interested, we've got Doug Herney on the left, Eric Bowe next to him, Bob Benkin, and Sudi Williams.
How old's Eric?
They're all what?
How old is Eric? The guy at the tick on the left.
I don't know.
He looks a bit older than the others. This could be.
I wanted to spend a couple of seconds just talking about this. This is interesting thing. It's about the budget, federal budget. As you know, NASA got fully funded in this fiscal 2016, which was really good, because a few months ago we weren't sure that they had enough money to make the commercial space actually fund that, and the risk was it would be delayed. So they got funded, but oops, go back. Okay, here is where we are now. This is the good old days, and here NASA got 19 point whatever it was, $19.3 billion, but that represents 0.43% of the government budget, which is running at about $3 trillion. So, but in the so 0.4 is about 0.5%. Here was about 4.5 in the Apollo days. So you can see things have declined quite rapidly, and this year has actually increased a little bit. So
now I have to say, while the story is true that the peak was in '67, that is a very poor graph because it doesn't paint a true story. It's just talking about relative percentages. Now, if say the economy had gone up tenfold, then in dollar terms the space budget hasn't changed at all. That's just a number expressed as a percentage of the economy. So if it was expressed in say 1967 adjusted dollars, then it's a more realistic curve.
But the point I'm trying to make is that the budgets have continually, other than a couple of minor peaks, you know.
Agreed, but that graph doesn't show that.
Yeah, it's hard to take your measures, but the bottom line is that this year NASA got more money than it actually requested, and that's a trend that overturns what's been happening the last few years. So
you notice how there's the NASA request, there's the congressional
and then the Senate
bid, and there's the White House bid, and the three of them are never the same, and the final number is never one of those three anyway.
Just to let you know, the CCICAP, they'll be paying $60 million per flight to get 4 astronauts into the ISS. At the moment, they've paid the Russians $80 million. This program has allowed 2 manned systems to be developed for $5 billion. And I've not known NASA to develop anything for $5 billion. When they cancelled Constellation, they've already spent $10 billion on it in 2010. So it's been really good value for money to actually do this. The other thing is, once they get going, they'll be flying 2 times per year, so each of them can actually fly at a flight rate of, you'll get 4 manned flights to the space station. 2 with Boeing, 2 with, CST-100. Just so you know, each company has got 2 test flights and has got 2 guaranteed operational flights, up to 6 operational flights. Boeing has already received its orders for the 2 operational flights. Okay, Boeing will fly the 2 test flights is an unmanned to the space station, and then there's a manned version to the space station. Boeing will fly, I think it's April, May, I can't, I've got the numbers here somewhere. April will be a 30-day to the ISS unmanned, and then in July they'll do a 14-day manned, and after that operational flights will commence.
That's 2017.
2017, so next year. So you'll certainly see a fair bit of action coming up. I mean, Boeing has received both those orders, but there's a whole series of things that are now going to happen this year. You're going to get parachute testing, for example, and they're going to test landing in water, because the CST-100 actually lands on land. So there's a series of milestones that I won't go through, but there's a number of them. And this is how they launch. And you'll see, this is pad 41 that Stewart showed us, and that structure that you see in the background is about 80% complete. They're waiting for the white room to be finalised, and then they'll integrate that. But that's the Atlas with the CST-100 on the top. Moving on. This is pad 41, and you can see when this picture was taken, there's that structure, and that's for astronauts, because they don't actually need it for the Atlas launches, but they will for the astronauts. And this is, again, a later picture. This is actually, I think, Cygnus going up, and there's that structure again. Then you've got Dragon. Now, there's a picture of that big shed that they built at pad 39A. This will be used, sorry, go back. This will be used for the Falcon Heavies, as well as the manned launches of the Crew Dragon. They will, in the early days, keep this structure, but that will all get replaced, as you can see here. This is what it'll eventually will look like. This structure can use the single Falcon rocket or the Super Heavy. And again, they'll be the first to launch to the space station next year, and they're slated to go up at the end of this year. The unmanned version of Falcon will go up at the end of this year, up in the current schedule, and they will launch the first men to the station in April. Then, who gets the first operational flight hasn't been decided yet. So neither Boeing nor SpaceX have been chosen. Now, as part of again, all the things that they have to do, at the moment, SpaceX are building 3 Dragons, manned rated Dragons. One is unmanned, and it will be refurbished to do what's called an in-flight abort test, which will occur next year. The other 2 are man-rated capsules that they will use for their ongoing manned missions. Now, as part of the qualifications testing, there's a little program called Dragonfly, and this is the first of a series of tests. The first one will be tether, The second will be drop from a helicopter and fire the engines. And the third one will be hop, parachute, retro fire. And the last one will be full hop and retro land propulsively. This test, as I understand it, was part of the NASA contract. I'm not sure if it was part of the CCTI cap or whether it was the earlier one, but we'll get to the actual. All right, Michael, if you. Which one's the? All right, play this one. Yeah, play this one.
So this actually took place on
November
24, but they only released the video and the pictures on Friday.
And this was in McGregor, which is in Texas. And by the way, this is the refurbished one that did the paddleboard test. Same rocket. Here we go. It's only a 5-second burn, but it was enough to give them. You could see that it was nice and stable and did the job nicely.
So they obviously fixed the engine that broke last time.
This was a quarter. This was a quarter power of what they used in the paddleboard. Okay.
So it's quarter of the power.
Yeah.
So these are throttleable.
These are these have a range that's just unbelievable. They have a real wide range of low throttle to very high throttle. They're amazing engines.
It was throttle. It was shot up past the.
Yeah. Okay. So. A couple of the milestones that SpaceX are going to achieve is obviously validate the propulsive landing, parachute testing. Interestingly enough, the Crew Dragon has 4 parachutes, so that'll be interesting.
Is there flame inside that capsule?
No, that's a dummy window, by the way. It's not a real window. All right, moving on. We go on to the Crew. This is called the commercial resupply. This is the current contracts which SpaceX have got with Orbital ATK to actually supply the space station. And this was the Cygnus, the extended Cygnus that went up not so long ago. And this is the Dragon that we're all familiar with the non-pressurised tank and the pressurised capsule. Okay, so I guess the take-ups on this is that CRS-8 is coming up in March, and that'll be the resupply mission. If you recall, the CRS-7 in June last year blew up, and then they have to return back to flight in December, which we'll talk about. And but they've going to launch CRS-8 on the 20th of March, and that I read may be a sea landing, but I'm surprised because I thought the low Earth orbit meant that they could return back to the Cape, like the Orbicon mission. So watch this space, but I've got the feeling that they may go for the sea launch, sea landing. But
determined to get that right.
Sorry?
They're determined to get that right.
Oh, they have to. They've got no choice.
Yeah.
For the next mission, for example, which is SES-9, it's a geostationary orbit delivery. You've got to have the barge out there because you haven't got enough fuel to get back to the land. So they're going to try the barge landing the next mission.
Have they got enough fuel to get the barge to where it's meant to be?
Yeah, we have to.
There's a shortage of hydraulic fluid.
Okay, the big announcement, which was really a really good one, was the announcement of the CRS-2, and 3 companies got the Guernsey on this one. We have the repeats. We had SpaceX with their Dragon, and we had the extended Cygnus, and but a newcomer was the cargo Dream Chaser, and quite a significant appointment really, because the whole contract, if they take up all their options and do all the trips that are necessary, can tally up to 2024 to $14 billion. So it's a big package. But one thing's for certain, each of these, including Dream Chaser, will deliver cargo to the space station.
Starting in
2019.
Yeah.
The NASA had a variety of capabilities. It was they requested a delivery, return, disposal, an accelerated return for those that can do it. I'll come back to that. And they also wanted an insurance policy from each of these guys that if they damage government property, they've got it covered. But it's interesting because there's a bit of a debate about what the who could achieve the requirements. As I've understood them, and I know other people have discussed it the other way, you don't have to have this to have a recovery back to Earth, even though Orbital ATK did have a sort of a concept of a capsule entry module. The reality is they don't have to do it. What this does is it gives NASA the ability to pick and choose, based on their contract, which one is going to serve the particular mission. So NASA have got flexibility, reliability, redundancy, I guess, having 3 companies do the work to deliver cargo to the space station. Further, they will coincide with the manned program as well to get people to the station. What this capability gives NASA is that the space station goes from 6 people to 7. So it's quite an extensive, thoroughly thought out process. The only drama is that the space station is decommissioned in 2024 now. Hopefully, they'll find some money somewhere.
Now, who was talking about 2028 now? Who wants to keep stretching it? Was the Americans or the Russians? Or the Europeans?
Could be the Europeans.
So the longer they keep that thing going, the longer it holds everything else back.
Now the other thing is that I've got the feeling that the current Dragon gets captured, right? The Dragon they'll be using on this is I think it's a souped up version of the Crew Dragon,
yes.
And it will have docking capability. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not going to see this version 1 model in this project, in this program. You'll see the version 2, but cargo version of that.
Yeah.
There's Cygnus launching on the Atlas, and here is the Dream Chaser. And as you can see, that component has a docking adapter. That is being actually sourced from the Europeans. I'm not quite sure they're building the whole of that back bit, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do. There it is, docked to the side. It's not manned.
That knocked us out.
And no windows.
It's got foldable wings so that they can fit into the standard Ariane and Atlas fairing. There it is again. Do we want to run the space pod? I've probably said
we don't.
We don't have to. I've probably said enough. We've got time. Now I'll get to. There was one other thing I want to say about Dream Chaser. They've done an extensive marketing campaign to get where they are, but some people will ask about the manned Dragon. We'll probably get to that later.
Have they managed to do a successful drop test where they land on all 3 legs? Or
which one?
Dream Chaser.
Under the original contract, sorry Michael, you were going to say. All right, under the original contract that they had with NASA, they will undertake another drop landing test, and that should come very shortly.
Very soon.
Yeah. It's imminent in the next few months, and they've refurbished it. Probably put better landing gear on this one. If you recall, one of the landing gear failed to open, and the thing tipped over, and then they refurbished it. And that's what they're going to drop test again. So Dream Chaser still haven't lost sight of their manned version. I'll talk about that later. Now, SpaceX. Okay, what have they been doing in their own? They had to return to flight in December, okay? And they came up with Orcon 2. This is a modified, this is called Falcon FT, full thrust. It's got 110% rated thrust engines. It's got super chilled, I think it's oxygen and hydrogen. Are they both super chilled?
Just chilled.
I think it's oxygen. The liquid oxygen is super chilled, which makes it more efficient in terms of combustion. And they've actually added a little bit more fuel onto this thing.
What other options do you get with it? Come with a spoiler?
Oh man, I mean, he has to settle on a couple of options because he can't get certification from the US Air Force, right? So if he keeps changing it, the US Air Force won't certify it. So he's got a bit of a bind to keep his versions under control. Anyway, so OrbCom came up, and sorry,
The last one was a video.
which one?
The one before.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
Is that a video? That's not a video.
Yeah, that's a video of the launch, landing and deployment.
I've got other ones that are. If that's, let's play these other ones. Let's play these other ones. Okay, the hallmark of this one was they were going to attempt to land on launch. Now, they call this Launch Complex 1, but I've read everywhere it's called Landing Zone. Landing Complex 1. I see everywhere it's Landing Zone 1.
It's landing zone 1. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
Okay, now, Michael and I were debating this the other day, but they decided to land here, but apparently when they used the Falcon Heavies, they got 3 boosters to return back to land. And,
so what's that guy's job?
He's waving it off.
He's got the paddle.
Or is he catching it?
No, he's just finished painting the...
painted the SpaceX.
It's all wet around, he's got to wait till it dries.
Apparently there's space around here for another 2 pads where the other boosters can actually land, so that'll be something. And I don't know if there's a 3rd barge, so when they use the Super Heavies, I got the feeling you're going to land them here on land. Anyway, moving on. See, that says landing complex 1.
Sorry. Yeah.
Called landing zone 1.
I think that was only a temporary sign.
Okay, and you can see that the launch pad here. Does anyone remember what they used? What did they use 13 for? The Trident missiles or something? No, it wasn't Trident. It was some early NASA program. Anyway, something to research. Anyway, so just to give you a bit of scale, that's 39A where they're going to launch the Falcon Heavy and where they launch the manned Falcon launches, and pad 40 and 41 where they currently launch the Atlas and launch are up here, somewhere up here. Anyway, moving on. This is worth watching. This is your OrbCom mission. You want to fire that? That's a video.
Yeah.
Fire it. We need to see it. I mean, those who haven't seen it.
The other one.
This is a BBC one. It actually delivered 11 communication satellites that day, and here's the 2nd stage engine firing.
Yeah, that was the other good thing that they did. No
Sorry?
one really picked up on this, was their first, 2nd stage dual firing.
That's right.
Yeah, they did test the dual firing because on this mission to geostationary, they have to fire that 2nd stage twice.
Yeah, which was the first time they did that too.
Yeah. For those that watched at the time, you can see the timeline. Here it comes coming in. This is what you actually saw on the internet stream. This is like a rocket launch in reverse.
Somebody disproves this theory. The trajectory was different.
How far from centerline was it? Wasn't
less
much.
than
1.3 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, they're just going to have to
Right, that's it.
The other one was much better.
Oh, we can play that. I'm happy to go back. Let's. You want to go back?
Yeah.
I'm happy to go back.
It's a slick package, but
It's
it
space.
gives you some extra views of the landing that are quite nice.
PC start to launch auto sequence.
This got good music to it.
Clock, completely ready for engine chill in 30 seconds. Clock is ready for engine chill. Spacecraft on internal power. Stage 1 launch, system on fuel, stage 2 fuel rates all on. All stations verified, ready for launch. All stations acknowledge. FTS. That's Stephen. Let's go. GNC. OSM. Recovery. Landing scale. LCLV. Go for launch. 5, 4, 3, 2,
worth watching.
A bit slick, but
It was worth
Worth those extra shots of the landing.
Oh yeah, excellent, excellent. All right.
One of the travesties about that Orbcon launch was there was an odd number of Orbcon satellites on board. So to balance it up, they put what they call a mass simulator on board. So they put 300 kilograms of steel on board. Well, you got all these universities wanting to launch 1 kilo CubeSats, and they put 300 kilos of steel on the side of the rocket just to balance it. At what is it, $15,000 to $20,000 a kilo?
I know, it's a lot of money that they've just done. Now these are just pictures. That was a video, but you've seen that. That's pictures of it actually landing. Quite spectacular, really. There it is, after it had landed, and that was the morning after. Not a good shot, that one. This was its. Now they brought this thing in just before Jason 3 went up. They actually did a test fire of those engines again. So they actually they were going to do it on pad 39A to get ready for the super heavies and launching from that pad. But for some reason that wasn't explained, they moved this back to pad 40. And they actually test fired it, and the reports were all the engines went well, but there was one engine that had some thrust fluctuations, and so they were looking into it. So, you know, the verdict's still out on whether they really can reuse these things effectively.
The thought was that there was some debris in engine 9.
Yeah, so when it lands,
it's
kicking up dust, and there you have it.
But the fact that they test fired it a few weeks after it landed, pretty good. Yeah, NASA would have taken 9 months.
Wouldn't have done it. Too risky. Wouldn't have done it.
So this is in that long, the SpaceX building next to pad 39A.
Correct. This is inside.
And is that charring? That grey is charring, I assume? Because the rocket was white when it took off.
That's right, yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Because it's flying back down into its exhaust pipe.
But clearly, that's the tanks. They're cold tanks here, and there's obviously some sort of interstage.
Was the rocket white because it was covered in frost?
No, they're pre-launch
They're
rollout.
they're all white.
Images
Anyway,
of white.
moving on.
There's some degree of re-entry as well.
Yeah, it was what I read, it was the re-entry, and because that other tank was still cold and frozen, that's why I didn't change it.
Okay. This then led us to the next mission from Vandenberg, and this was the Jason 3 mission, and it was going to do the old, there it is again, land on this thing here. Just read the instructions.
This gives you some idea of the conditions. This photograph was taken soon, or not very long before the attempted landing. So
we're very foggy that day, and you'll see it with the videos. And it's not a very good slide, but you can kind of get the gist that it does a sort of a loop manoeuvre and then comes back down.
Vicky versa.
Sorry?
Vicky versa, you start on this side.
You start here, you go up here, one continues on the orbit, and the second stage, and the first stage does a sort of a fire, one burn, second burn, third burn. These have 3 engine burns, this has single engine burn for landing. And you can actually see it when you see the video. I think they've actually got a high, in some of the videos you might actually see that upper burn in one of the pictures. Anyway.
And in case you're wondering where this landing platform is located, off the coast of California.
There's San Diego.
So Vandenberg is north, so it's off the screen above Malibu, just to give you up there somewhere. Yeah.
And the barge was out there. So
you have to remember this was a polar orbital.
It's a polar orbit, yeah. Polar orbit.
And so it goes south, that's correct.
Okay, this is a video. Would you like to show it? And this is what happened. Right on the centre. Now, apparently one of the legs didn't lock. If you notice the other videos, they release the legs very low to the ground. And I don't know if they need a little bit more time to latch on or whatever. But said, here's one. It looks like buckling to me, but hey.
They said that the locking mechanism was frozen in
Yeah.
place from the launch.
Well, that was one. I don't know if have they confirmed that.
That came from SpaceX.
Okay.
So.
Said there was a little bounce, I think, in there.
Anyway, but irrespective, that was a pretty good landing. I mean, you know, to actually get it on the centre line of this thing. And the waves were actually not flat. They were, you know, 3-4 metre waves. So the barge was doing a good job of keeping itself stable, and they still managed to land it.
How much fuel does it land with? How close to empty is it?
I don't know.
Pretty much.
Because it blows up, so it's obviously got fuel.
That's right. No, it's not fuel that blows it up. It's the compression. So all the tanks have to be fully compressed still.
And this was on the barge coming back to LA, and this was sort of the remnants of it. You can see bits of lead there and rocket engines.
They're going to fire those rockets again?
I don't think so. I think it's extensive damage.
I reckon that's right.
How does he describe it, Len? What's that comment, that word that he uses?
Control system.
Disassembly.
Some
unplanned disassembly, was it?
So, yeah, something like that.
Unplanned rapid disassembly.
Yeah, that's it. And this is pad 39A. So SpaceX now are going to continue to try to land these things. The next one is, this is what the Falcon Heavy is going to look like on pad 39A. Now, of course, when it first flies, it's still got the old space shuttle structures, launch structures, but eventually they'll have their own tower, which gives them access, not so much for the Heavy, but certainly for the Falcon Crew Dragon. So, now the manned Dream Chaser that I talked about before, you know, how difficult is it to get the current cargo version that will be flying and turn it into man? Apparently it's not that hard. The life support systems are not that hard to put in and get it all manned rated. The only problem is to get the man rating will take time. So if they decide to make a manned version of this thing in a few years' time, add another couple of years to get certified. But it's not that hard. So this was the earlier version of the manned Dream Chaser. There you have it. And this is the happy team at Sierra Nevada. And you'll notice there's the two there. This is a flight article that you'll see do the drop test. And that's probably the one that's going up in at the end of the year.
Except that in the previous shot, there's a sign that says it's an engineering test.
Is it?
Engineering test.
Okay, fair enough. But I remember at the time Sierra Nevada, when it was buying for contracts, did notionally slate November, December this year, unmanned flight of this thing on a rocket. So we don't know if that's going to happen now because the money dried up, of course. But now they've got some money, they might be able to do something. Now we go to Blue Origin. Now, if you recall, and we'll play a bit of this, back in November, here go on. Oh, sorry, I did that. Okay, back in November, they launched this new Shepherd with their launcher, and it came back and landed. Okay, so that's pretty cool.
So we announced this at our last meeting on November the 23rd, and we said at that time that this was imminent. It could happen in the next couple of days. Sure enough, the next day there was news that they had actually done it.
Right.
So Blue Origin are notoriously secretive.
This is pretty good because they make slick videos, not at the launch, they won't give you a live telecast, but they'll make a slick video afterwards to demonstrate what they've done. This is pretty cool. This is in West Texas.
Drag brake check good. Forward fin check good. Aft fin check good. LGS check good. Ready for flight. T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff. 7 feet per second. Touchdown. Engine stop. Welcome back, Shepard. Perfect landing. We made history today. Now, who wants to go to space?
Okay. Now, just so everyone knows, there is a video, but I don't know if we're going to have time to show them all. But the difference between this and SpaceX is that SpaceX actually delivers a payload to orbit. This is suborbital. This is meant for tourism, essentially.
Like your X-Core type thing.
It's like it competes against the Virgin, Spaceship 2 and X-Core. But they were the first. I mean, if you recall, SpaceX had failed 3 times to land. They came up in November. Jeff Bezos, who runs Blue Origin, is Mr. Amazon.com. Elon Musk, who runs SpaceX, is ex-PayPal. So that's where they made all their trillions of dollars. And there's this really interesting rivalry that goes on between them. When he landed that, Elon Musk was at pains to explain that they're not the same league. His SpaceX Falcon and this is not in the same league. So he landed first. When SpaceX landed his Falcon, I think Jeff Bezos on Twitter sort of said, "Welcome to the club," and it wasn't the same club. But it's been quite an interesting rivalry, and you keep your eye on it because it makes you laugh at the way they react to each other. But the competition is really good because it's spurring on some amazing.
But this is a good video that explains the differences between the two systems.
Do you want to play it?
No, we haven't got time. We have time. It's a good little video.
Okay. Now,
sorry, I just keep thinking it's going to be a lot of fun to get a bunch of floating space tourists back in their seats within 4 minutes.
Yes.
Good luck.
Good luck. Unreal.
Okay, a few mid-January, right? 22nd of January, actually, a few days back. There was a NOTAM. The NOTAM means, what did you say? It was a notice to airmen. To airmen. Don't come around this area. Okay, so everyone knew something was going to happen, and this was a picture that someone took from near the launch site in West Texas, and this is what happened. And this is the same one you just saw land. They have reused it, and this is second landing of this, and this is a good video too. changed the software, the algorithms for this thing. Before, if you recall the first landing, the thing was all over the place. You know, trying to get itself onto the centre line, right? So it was moving all over the place. What they did with the algorithms now, with the computer software, actually at a certain height, targets the centre, and then when it gets to a certain point, it just lands at best opportunity and just comes down. And that limited the amount of oscillation and you know, gimballing of the engines and all the rest of it. And as you can see, not quite as accurate, but boy, pretty accurate. It's perfect. So, good outcome for Blue Origin. Fantastic. Now these guys have leased space at Kennedy Space Center. For the tourism trade, they'll be flying it out of West Texas supposedly, but these guys are working on their own booster and their own orbital capsule, and watch this space. They are developing what's called the B4 engine. This uses the B3 engine. What's the B4? I think it's a methane engine. Fantastic. They'll use that, but it's also being proposed for other rockets as well, which I'll talk about in a second.
Does this thing have a launch escape system?
Yeah, it's got a pusher.
It's got pusher rockets, yeah.
Yeah, it has.
How far down range is it planned, the capsule? And does it have to do any re-entry type? Is any re-entry heating?
300,000 feet.
There'll be some heating.
There'll be some heating, but it's not insurmountable. It's not like a...
But because they're coming down on parachutes, they're going to land where the wind takes them.
It's coming from a zero state.
It's not from zero, it's not coming from 25,000.
Don't know, that's a good question. They'll probably keep launching this, because there was a series, I forget, there's a number, there's something like 12 in this program, test program, there's some 12 launches, so they've done 2, so presumably the other amount will be using this one. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how far they can push it.
How fast?
All right.
How fast and how
Now,
far?
one other thing that's going to impact on commercial space, it's kind of government initiative, but it's the replacement of the RD 180s, which are used on the Atlas. Now, Mr. Shelby, who runs the committee for NASA, snuck in a couple of clauses into an omnibus funding proposal, and basically eliminated the ban on the import of RD 180s. If you recall, Senator McCain, right, from Arizona, he put a ban on procuring RD 180s. And as soon as the ban was lifted through this omnibus thing in mid-December, ULA quickly went and ordered all the RD 180s that it needed to compete against SpaceX for government contracts. However, what that did was it spurred the US Air Force to award contracts to a whole bunch of people to basically redevelop American engines. And there's a whole stack of people that have got funding now, ATK, Orbital ATK, SpaceX. Even SpaceX, in the development of their Raptor engine, has got some funding. Certainly Blue Origin have got money for the B4, and so by 2019 the idea is they're going to have a whole series of new engines available to them to build American rockets with American engines. Interestingly, later this year there's another EELV contract coming out, and no doubt SpaceX will go in, no doubt ULA with Vulcan, possibly Blue Origin with a new rocket that we haven't heard of. So the US Air Force, and by the way, these contracts are meant, they're kind of a public-private partnership deal where the industry has to put in a third of the costs and the American government will put in the rest. So there's some exciting developments in terms of engine development over the next few years. The two ULA, this is the BE4 and this is the Aerojet Rocketdyne AR1. This one is closer to being developed than that. That's the preferred model for the new ULA rocket Vulcan, if it ever comes to fruition. And Orbital ATK are obviously building solid rocket versions of some of these rockets. So, exciting times. Virgin, there's a Boeing 747 it had, it's now turned it into one of these, and it's going to be launching their, what do they call that thing? Launcher One. So that'll come on stream. A couple of other things that I thought I'd throw in because they look good. Bigelow, as you know, is proposing orbital hotels and all sorts of stuff, but in the current budget that NASA got, 50 million has been allocated to start design work on the habitat modules for deep space. And Bigelow obviously is really keen on getting involved in that proposal. So this thing here is called the Olympus. It's huge, as you can see, and there's a mock-up on the ground. So, you know, it may be a future option. Last thing I want to finish on is, this is a Chinese spacecraft. It's very a la Apollo-esque, but this is intended, this is the Chinese developing their new series of spacecraft to go to the moon. And you can see they've got a 14-ton and a 20-ton spacecraft there. So, by the way, all this engine stuff that's going on, it's prompted the Russians to start again redeveloping its engine technology. And they've been pretty good in the past, so it would surprise me if they don't come up with some beauties in the next few years. So, these are exciting times.
Is there a Bigelow module going up in the ISS or not?
It is. Sometime this year, I haven't got a firm date for it, but it is going up sometime this year. There's a small inflatable habitat going up on the ISS. That's it.
Thank you.
Interesting, isn't it?
So,
yeah. There's a couple of sticky egg puddings here.
Someone ordered sticky egg pudding, didn't get it.
Just do the first video.
Okay, what?
And then the slides.
You have yours? Did you go?
Unless they brought it first. Okay, most of the news out of the Middle East is pretty dismal, so I thought I'd cheer us up by showing us a short video.
Mars is a mysterious planet that's always fascinated people on Earth. We still have plenty of unanswered questions.
For instance, we know there is water on Mars, but only in the form of ice and vapor. Water can't exist on Mars as liquid because the atmosphere has become too thin. Oxygen and hydrogen, the building blocks of water, are being lost into space. We also know that Mars has some exotic weather, like massive dust storms, similar to those on Earth, which are more brief and localized. On Mars, the dust storms can engulf the entire planet and rage on for months.
Our science mission is to produce the first ever truly global picture of the Martian atmosphere. This is the first holistic study of the Martian climate and how the layers of the atmosphere fit together.
We will model the connections between all the different components of the Martian climate, including all the temperatures, winds, dust, and clouds.
Scientists on Earth will use the data that will be sent by the probe to build a complete dynamic picture of the Martian climate. This is something that has never been seen before.
Our data will give the international science community a deeper and richer understanding of the Martian atmosphere.
First, this will help us to model Earth's atmosphere and how it will evolve with time over millions of years. Second, it will allow us to analyze newly discovered planets far across the galaxy to be able to determine if there is life on it.
We will share the data freely with more than 200 universities and research institutes around the world. This is our contribution to human knowledge.
We want the orbiter to arrive at Mars in 2021, the UAE's 50th anniversary. Earth and Mars align their orbits once every 2 years. So we have a very short launch window in July 2020. We have to be ready by then. There will be no second chance. It's a race against time.
The spacecraft will be launched in the nose cone of a rocket.
The rocket must exceed 40,000 kilometers per hour. to break out of Earth's gravity.
The set of boosters and rocket stages will fire up and fall away in turn.
It will fire its thrusters and accelerate to 100,000 km/h. Then the spacecraft will separate from the launcher. It will unfold the solar panels and point the spacecraft toward the sun to charge the batteries. The journey across the solar system will take around 7 months. As it travels, the spacecraft needs to figure out its location. There is no GPS in deep space.
So the spacecraft will use star trackers to navigate using patterns of constellations.
This is similar to the way our ancestors used the stars to find their way in the desert and at sea.
When the spacecraft gets close to Mars, it'll have to use its thrusters as brakes. It'll need to slow down to 14,000 kilometers per hour to enter orbit.
This will be a tense time at mission control in the UAE. The thrusters must fire for 13 minutes at precisely the right time. If anything goes wrong, the spacecraft will pass Mars and the mission will fail. But we can't control the spacecraft in real time from Earth. When it's so far away, signals can take more than 14 minutes to arrive. Its brain will be sophisticated enough to make its own decisions.
Look back in history. The Middle East was once a powerhouse for innovation and science. Muslim civilizations were once pioneers in mathematics and astronomy. This will be the first ever Arab-Islamic mission to another planet.
The Emirates Mars mission will have a major impact and a legacy here in the UAE. That's because of the approach that we took to planning and building this mission.
The easy way to do it would have been to go and buy technologies and expertise from big space agencies and companies.
We decided to do it ourselves, to build it ourselves, and to learn with our partners along the way. This mission is managed by a 100% Emirati team.
Emirati universities and research institutions will work on the science. That way we get to build the knowledge and keep the skills. This mission will be the catalyst for a new generation of Arab scientists and engineers. It will be an anchor project for the space and science sector here in the UAE.
That's one reason I'm so proud and excited to be part of the mission as an Emirati and as an Arab.
It's very symbolic for an Arab and Muslim country to launch an interplanetary mission. We have taken a step beyond just looking at the skies. We are going there.
I think it will change the way young people look at their region.
It will help us think positively and see hope and opportunity. If a small young Arab nation is able to reach Mars, truly anything is possible.
That's very good. That's most impressive.
Yeah. Now, I thought at first that might be a hoax, but I checked it out with several other sources, and yeah, there is such a space agency, and yep, they really are seriously trying to do it. Now, leave out the MP4s, please.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Well, I thought I had. I don't know why.
Right. Quick whiz around the solar system and updates since last November. Obviously this is Pluto from New Horizons. Notice the ice mountains going over to the slushy plains over on the side there. And you'll notice that some of the mountains are white and others got the reddish sort of colour in them. And that's because it's water ice and there's other organic materials on those materials.
Organic, you say?
Organic?
Or
yeah,
hydrocarbon compounds.
Carbon compounds, they're organic. Anything with carbon is called organic. Now, I'm not going to enlarge this because it takes too long, but this is a long strip of highly detailed going right across those mountains down onto
Sputnik Planum. And that really enlarges up quite large and takes quite a long time to scroll down. They've made a movie of it, which I have there but won't have time to show today. More detailed pictures are coming back now. We're now downloading the high-res pictures. And once again we see the ice mountains with the darker material, this is organic stuff, and then down on the bottom here we have Sputnik Planum and this plate-like structure. There are very few craters, but there are some. Impact craters, that is. And you can see a few here, which is exposing the materials underneath it. And this is pitted terrain down on Sputnik Planum, which is still not quite sure what's causing it, but it appears to be where some of the material has evaporated away or sublimed away. It's mainly nitrogen ice. Once again, this enlarges up quite nicely, and this is interesting how this was taken. When they needed the instrument, one of the instruments to scan across, the spacecraft had to be tilted like I'm tilting now. Well, rather than just leave the cameras doing nothing, they said, okay, let's take some pictures while we're doing it. They're not going to be the best pictures, and they stitched them together so we get a pan right across the planet Pluto, right, dwarf planet Pluto. Once again, notice the different colours of materials in there, the difference between the water ice and these other materials which they think are tholins. A whole day on Pluto. Some of the pictures are not high res because obviously they were taken 3 days out, because it takes 6 days to do the cycle, and they did a similar one with Charon. InSight. InSight was due to launch in March this year, land on Mars, drill down, and had a very sensitive instrument to measure Marsquakes, to measure the activity. It had to differentiate between the quaking of the spacecraft caused by the wind and the quaking of the wind blowing on the rocks and so on, to do that. That instrument developed a leak during its development. They thought they'd fixed it. The French who were developing this thing thought they'd fixed it, but just in the end of last year, they discovered it was still leaking. As a result, NASA took the decision to postpone the launch to the next launch opportunity, which is, of course, 2 years away. So, InSight will not be launching this year. And that's the actual lander there. Now going to sit in storage, obviously, for 2 years. Dawn mission, still in orbit around Ceres, having finished at Vesta. Meanwhile, the scientific data is coming back from the operations around Vesta, and here's a geological map of Vesta, showing the varied terrains and so on that they have with different rock types. Rosetta has positively identified patches of water ice on the surface. Most of the ice is buried underneath layers of granules which are from several micrometers to several millimeters in size. But there are patches, as shown in the arrows here, of bare ice, and it's been positively identified with the Vertus instrument. This is a picture looking away from the comet from Rosetta, turned away, looked away from the comet, and look at the dust and so on. This is the environment in which Rosetta is flying, and why it is still flying about 100 kilometers away from the comet. However, this is a recent picture taken earlier in January, earlier this month, of one part of the comet that's not been seen until now because it's been hidden. This is on the southern hemisphere of the comet, where it's only now it's gone through perihelion that the sunlight is on that. And that enlarges quite nicely. It's beautiful if you can see it up close. The Cassini mission is nearing its end. It's still like about 2 years away, but it's now going through the final phases. It's done the final flybys of Enceladus, made 3 final flybys last year, and it's going on. Just a reminder for those of you who signed your names to be on it, you will plunge into a Saturn and burn up. And so the CD, which has my name on it, and who else has got their name on that CD? There's a few others.
I think so.
Okay, well, that'll be the end of it. You'll still have your name on Untitled if you also signed up for the Huygens mission. And there's the guys just before they put it on the spacecraft. We've got out of order here, sorry. This is the Dawn, back to the Dawn mission again. And we are still in orbit around Ceres and will be there for some time yet. What happens at the end of that's not been specified, whether they go up into solar orbit or just leave it in orbit around Ceres, I'm not sure. Hey. Don't know what happened there, we had those twice. Hayabusa 2 is en route to Comet, an asteroid, and we'll land on it and pick it up. So that mission's still ongoing, and watch out for news of that during the year. Juno is due to arrive mid-year at Jupiter. There are lots of spacecraft at Mars and on Mars, and here's some, we've got Mars Express, Mars Odyssey, Maven, and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and the Indian Mars Orbiter mission, MOM, which are all in orbit around Mars. This is Maven, which has detected the way in which, and is still measuring, the way in which gases escape from the atmosphere of Mars and its interaction with the solar wind. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter is sending back splendid pictures. Again, we could enlarge that up and see huge detail in it. But that's typical of the sort of product that they're now producing from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Meanwhile, on Mars, we have the Curiosity, the Mars Science Laboratory. This is a selfie by the spacecraft. And you can get an idea of the rough terrain that's going over, and if you look closely, you see the holes in the wheels that rough terrain is causing. And this is a problem with the thing. If it runs over the safe terrain, the rocks and so on, which you can quite easily run over, it's puncturing the wheels, punching holes in the wheels. So you say, well, okay, why don't we drive across the sand dunes? Well, yeah, no holes in the wheels, but you risk getting bogged down. And this is a little test they did end of last year when they drove onto a sand dune and back out to see, well, okay, because remember, Opportunity got bogged down several times in sand dunes. And speaking of Opportunity, now, Michael, can we enlarge that now, go Command Plus or whatever, and so on, because we have here, this is almost my last picture, yeah, where it's been, and at the moment it is wintering, exploring this area here, with it's in the southern hemisphere, and it's the winter in the southern hemisphere, and the sun's to the north, and so they've got the solar panels facing the north, and they're keeping on this sort of slope here during the winter, but they're still doing good science and still active.
What's the sort of scale on that? What's the scale on that, Andrew, roughly?
Here, from here to there, it'd be kilometre, 2 kilometres. Okay.
It looks a lot further.
A typical drive, when it does drive, a typical drive is up to 100 metres, but usually about 30 metres or so, on an average. But this is on the western rim of Endeavour Crater. Okay, next picture is, that's it. So there was supposed to be one more picture there, Michael.
Andrew,
very last one.
Whilst you're finding it, you didn't mention Planet X.
There we go.
Oh, that's the last slide.
That's the one.
Sorry.
I selected it.
No, the one you didn't select.
It's an MP4.
That's an MP4 though. You
Let's
want the
play it.
MP4.
Oh,
So which is it?
Sorry.
Is it planet X to here?
Orbits planet X, number 37.
Well, let's try it.
Let's try it. There it is.
There's planet X.
Okay. Look, there was, you probably saw it on TV, reports that, yeah, some guys in America reckon they found, another planet, or suggestions of it. They haven't found a planet. Let's explain exactly what's going on. Because I've read the scientific paper that they wrote. There are these objects which are in orbit in the Kuiper Belt. The reports that I saw on TV suggested that these orbits are being gravitationally perturbed by Neptune and Uranus. Well, they're not. That's not what these scientists have reported. By the way, one of these scientists is the guy who helped kill Pluto as a planet. Okay, and they're respected scientists, so they're not crazies. What they have suggested is that by looking at all these objects... Oh, and they also said, the TV reports I saw said that by plotting the orbits of these things, they'd worked out that they're being altered by the gravity. Again, that's not what the report says. Because I thought, when I heard that, I thought, that's crazy. These things have only take hundreds of years to go around. Since they've been discovered, we've only sort of plotted them from there to there, as it were. And that's not enough to get an accurate fix on what might be perturbing their orbit. It's hard enough to actually determine the orbit. No, this is what they said. They said because all these things have their perihelion at about the same place, it suggests that their orbits have been modified by this mysterious planet, which they're not calling Planet X, by the way. And they are planning to use the Subaru telescope, which is a wide area. Because if they try to use the Hubble to try and find this thing, or they try and use some of the other telescopes, they've got such a narrow point of field of view that the chances of pointing in the right directions and getting something is almost zero when you don't know where it is. So, the Subaru has a wide field of view and can photograph in great, with high resolution, quite large areas of the sky. And they're going to do the search in that area there to try and find this object which they suggest would be in the orbit shown in red. So it's somewhere in that orbit there, if it exists. And when it comes through here, it alters the orbit of these other things. So that's what they've suggested. They haven't found the planet. They're not calling it Planet X. They're calling it Planet 9, N-I-N-E. Okay, if it thinks. They're not going to try and even bother giving it a name or anything yet, because that would make people go crazy if they did. So they're going to search in that area to see if this idea pans out. That's the situation at the moment. So there's no Planet X yet. They're just a suggestion that thing. But I have my doubts about the whole thing. But anyway, there you go.
It's even harder than that because even if the orbit, the hypothesis of this orbit fits the observation, so it's a good, robust working model. That doesn't mean the planet exists, but even if that was the orbit, you wouldn't know where in the orbit to look for it.
Exactly, which is why they need the Subaru telescope, which has that wide field of view and can search a wide area quite efficiently.
The theory also said, and they didn't find this initially, but only after they tweaked the model, was that it wasn't at the perihelions of all these Kuiper Belt objects, it was on the other side, it was 180 degrees away. So if you have a look at the perihelion of Planet 9, it's on the left-hand side, and all the perihelions on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And that was counterintuitive. But the more they ran this model, the more it fitted the observations. So it is a solid mathematical basis to go look for the thing, but that doesn't mean that it exists.
So is there an alternative?
Well, there's several other...
Well, no one's come up with an alternative explanation, and this thing would have to be very large. It would have to be at least Neptune or Uranus size.
It might be multiple objects.
Yeah.
It might be multiple objects, and there might be other ones in other orbits.
And it could be just coincidence that all these things have their perihelion about the same area.
Yeah.
But they say in their paper that the chances of it being just chance
that's right.
is about 1 in 10,000.
Well, you do a statistical test on it. You test what is the probability of that happening, and it turns out to be ridiculously low.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's another fly in the ointment, and that is the WISE telescope, the Wide Field Infrared Space Telescope, Space Explorer, which is a NASA satellite which looked in infrared for dark stars, red dwarfs, planets and things, and it found nothing. And there could be no, according to the WISE data, there could be nothing within about 10,000 astronomical units.
It wasn't WISE only for Jupiter size.
Whereas this orbit they're planning here, suggesting, goes out, I think, to about 100, 200 AU, right? 200 astronomical units. Now, they are analysing more data from a different channel on the WISE results, and it's possible that might show something, but the standard analysis of the WISE data means that this thing can't exist.
I think it's more than 200 AU, Andrew. I think it's maybe about 2,000 AU. Because if you have a look at Pluto's orbit there, Pluto's at about 40 AU, and it's the little blue circle in there. But no, that's the Kuiper belt. So it's actually a couple of thousand AU.
Yeah, I haven't brought the figures along yet. Okay, they give a range of figures. Okay, and it's between 100 and several hundred AU for where they think it would be.
They were pretty freaked out when this part of the model worked, but then they looked at the inclinations as well outside of the ecliptic plane, and that added another element of evidence, and they thought, well, what are the odds? So they were really blown away. So it's a very robust mathematical model, but it's circumstantial.
It's a cloaked Death Star.
Anyway, it would be a very nice point if the person who killed Pluto, who's gone down in infamy for some people, killed Pluto, is responsible for finding another planet. That would be a nice reason.
I think it's a clump of dark matter.
Pluto wasn't.
So watch this space, is all I'll say on that, and that's my presentation. I've got a couple of movies in, but we don't have time. Thank you.
That's very good. Okay, we were going to have
Peter, sorry Peter.
No, don't apologise. A little presentation on the on Challenger. We clearly don't have time for that, but what I will do is...
Michael, just pointing out that regarding Challenger, there's a display over there on the table.
Well, I'll get to that first. So...
it's an interesting week, actually, because it's
it's
also Apollo 1.
That's correct.
It's also the first flyby. It's also the first flyby of Uranus as well.
They've always been anniversary.
But anyway, in particular, we were just going to spend a little bit of time remembering the Shuttle Challenger disaster, which took place 30 years ago this month, and that's the crew. And you'll see that same shot that Stewart took and showed us earlier in the memorial at KSC, and I just stole mine from the Smithsonian site. Given 30 years, we thought that it would have been nice to have just had a small presentation on that, but we're not going to because there's not enough time.
How many slides have you got?
Was that disaster on launch?
Just after launch, that's correct.
73 seconds.
73 seconds.
73 seconds.
73.1
And in fact, if you really want to, I can play the first minute of the video I was going to show you, which will remind us all of what took place. This particular video has the standard video that you normally see, plus some amateur handheld stuff that's been added in. It's a couple of years old. It's a retro report from the New York Times from about 2011 or something, 2012, something like that. But I'll just play the first few minutes just for us to remember.
9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4. And liftoff. Photos from the flight dynamics officer indicate that the vehicle apparently exploded.
Maybe we can show that in full next month, Mike.
Up until the Challenger act.
All right. Well, as usual, we have way more content and way more.
Sorry,
we could do.
Yeah. Can I just ask one more question to our astronomical gurus? Remember that that Death Star that they found? They were talking about obscuring the sunlight of a star, and then they ruled that out as impossible. Is there alternate explanations? They actually said it was a comet cloud that had diminished the...
Yeah, they're wondering if it was some type of cloud or something like that, because the first speculation everybody jumped to was a Dyson sphere.
The Dyson sphere.
Right, and some intelligence has built a shell around this star, and the starlight was coming through holes in the shell. And they found more plausible explanations for that. They're still not 100% sure. I haven't actually kept up with it in detail, but it's very attractive.
They're still going through the options, but they're pretty much dismissed the comet cloud.
So it's not a comet cloud, so it's a... What is it?
No, they're still going through options, but they've dismissed them.
What are some of the other options?
Well, severe star spots is one of them. There are whole lots of things. I mean, I used to observe stars with star spots, and you would get massive fluctuations in the light. But it was the periodicity of the fluctuations that was getting them. As it had to be some non-natural object that was doing it. No, it doesn't have to be something.
We've got enough observations, though.
Yeah, it's just not enough data, and I'll get more data. It's good to attract people's attention. Any news is good news.
Gets more people interested.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks everyone. That sort of brings to the close the formal part of the meeting this evening. And so I'd say great to see some new faces. And I'd also particularly like to say thank you to the members of the Space Association, particularly over the last 12 months, but more and more increasingly, actually stepping forward and becoming part of the show and presentation and standing up and presenting to you. So it's really great. It's great to get everyone involved. Now, here's the pitch. If you have a particular skill, interest, or you'd like to see something, make contact with us. We're very happy to have people present things. It could be small, it could be simply you went to somewhere and saw something cool and here's a couple of pictures, or it could be a full dissertation on how spacecraft we use. I don't know. Anyway, open invitation to everybody, and Michael is the meeting coordinator. He sort of manages all the content and things, but please make contact. And once again, thanks for coming along tonight, and feel free to hang around a little bit. We've got to sort of start packing up and easing out, but I think we can stay here for a while. Bang going downstairs, so we're not going to be pushing us out the door. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.